Let's begin with speculation today, as we sit here, that President Trump reportedly is considering ending DACA, the program that allows children who came into this country illegally to stay.
Well, I don't think that it's going to happen cold turkey like that. I think this is something that Congress needs to fix. The president prior, Obama, he was wrong in doing it because you can't have the executive just legislate out of thin air. So even courts have backed us up on that. At the end of the day, though, I would say these kids don't know any other home. I think there's a humane way to fix this. I think President Trump agrees with fixing this, and it's got to be up to the legislature. I think we need some time to be able to fix this. And so I would support fixing this, and we're going to need some time to do that, and I hope that there will be the time given to do that, and I think there will be.
All right. You've got a full plate, as we said, as you head
plate,
back after Labor Day. But suddenly there's a new challenge, a new priority as you deal with the aftermath now of the devastation in Texas. How quickly can Congress act? What will happen in terms of trying to fund the recovery?
I was just working on that driving over here to the studio. We're going to have to do this in tranches because right up front, we're going to have to backfill some emergency funding. We call this the DRF, the Disaster Relief Fund at FEMA. We've got to make sure that the money's still there for the FEMA emergency response, and that cash is draining fairly quickly. So we will step in very quickly to deal with that, but we will not be close to a near total estimate as to what is going to be needed. So we're going to have to do this in a few stages, and so we're prepared to do that. We're prepared to act very quickly to make sure that the immediate emergency funding is there, and then we're going to have to keep doing the assessments and probably have to do one or two more bills just to address to this. This is pretty unprecedented. 50 inches of rain. I've been speaking with members of Congress, Republicans and Democrats, in the Houston area, in the Louisiana border area. This is something that we've never seen before. So it's going to require probably a pretty unprecedented response at all levels of government. I'm pretty darn impressed with our state. I was just at Farm and Fleet this morning in Janesville in conjunction with the J.J. Watt Foundation. We got just people coming out of the woodwork, bringing supplies to send down to Harvey. Wisconsinites are stepping up. Americans are stepping up. It's a really pretty impressive thing to see. And yes, Congress will step up as well and make sure that the resources are there.
And as you see perhaps the price tag continue to rise in the weeks ahead, it raises a question of priorities for a lot of people. Who say, for example, should we be funding a border wall when the nation's fourth largest city and its residents, and one that's so critical to the U.S. economy, is in so much need of help? Where's the priority there?
Well, first of all, these don't have to be exclusive. We have an opioid problem. We have cartels bringing drugs over the border. We have, an immigration enforcement problem. That does need to be addressed. I went down to the border in April with the Border Patrol, who said we do need physical barriers at certain parts of the border to be able to stop all these drugs coming in. So this is something that's also a national security priority. We already passed funding for the physical barriers in the border in the House already. That bill is long out of the House. It's been about a month or so since we've got that done. That's going to probably go into near the end of the year when we have more debates about funding. But there is a need to secure our border, and it's not just a wall. It's a lot of things. It's levees, it's fences, it's technology, because we do have a problem with an unsecure border. We need to secure our border. That shouldn't be a partisan issue, by the way. I hope it's not. And that's something that does need to be addressed, because without having a secure border, that costs us a lot as well. It costs us in crime, it costs us in drugs, it costs us in the lack of the rule of law being enforced. So we shouldn't have to choose between very important government priorities. We should be able to juggle these responsibilities.
The president, as you know, has made the wall a priority, has talked about government shutdown at one point.
Yeah, I don't think that's necessary, and I don't think that that's even needed to get this done. We will have to do an extension at the end of the month. We call this a continuing resolution, because there's no way the Senate, with all the other things they're doing, putting judges on the bench, getting the cabinet, staffed up, there's no way they can process all the appropriations by that. And the president knows this, and so we fully anticipate that we're going to have an extension into probably December so that we can get all this work done.
At that point, is the president heading toward a showdown with Congress over this wall?
No, I don't think so. I've spoken with him many times about it. Like I said, the House already passed funding for the wall. So the House has done its job. The president's very pleased with that. The Senate has not gotten to this issue yet. They're not going to be able to get to this, especially now with Harvey and the responses we have to do. They're not going to be able to get to all these appropriations by the end of by the end of September here. So he knows that we're going to have to do an extension.
You have been traveling the country talking about tax reform. It's been a priority for you for years. The president was out on the road talking about it this week as well. You've got a plan. You've had a plan for some time. Warren Buffett recently said, look, this isn't tax reform. This is just a tax cut. Is it true reform? Will you be able to achieve what you hope to achieve?
Absolutely. Yeah, I feel very good about this, actually. I feel as good about this as any big legislative lift we've had yet. The reason I feel good about this is because the House, the Senate, and the White House, we all agree on the framework. We're all moving toward putting the details on that. And the reason I feel good about this is we know that we have to get this done if we want to get faster economic growth in America. We have the worst tax system in the industrialized world in this country. And it is really putting jobs at risk. It's putting wages at risk. It's putting our economic health at risk. Why do I say Johnson Controls, which is headquartered, I don't know, that way, 10 miles that way, they're not a U.S. company anymore. They're an Irish company. We are seeing so many U.S. firms being bought or taken over or moving overseas because of our tax code. We've got about $3 trillion of wealth that U.S. companies made overseas, sitting overseas, that can't come back into our country because of our tax laws. We tax American businesses at much higher tax rates than the other countries tax theirs. The corporate rate's 35%. The small business rate for successful small businesses, that's 44.6%. And we got the Canadians taxing their businesses at 15%, the Irish at 12.5%. The average tax rate on businesses in the world is 22.5%. And we are taxing American businesses competing in this global economy 35 to 45%. It is really, really hurting our economy. And so for that reason alone, we think we have to get this done. We think we will get this done. Not to mention the IRS is just a nuisance agency. And by having tax reform for families and individuals, simplifying the tax code, cleaning it up, making it simple to comply with. You can do your taxes on a postcard under our reform. We think that's something that families need. We think that will help families. We think it will help bring people needed tax relief. And we think it will help us get to 3% economic growth, which we have not seen since before the last recession.
You've argued it's common sense, a no-brainer.
Total common sense.
Why has it been such a hard sell?
Because
then?
Special interests usually trump the general interests. And that's going to be a fight we're going to have. I got to tell you, the reason this hasn't been done since 1986 is because the special interests have these loopholes and carve-outs in the tax code that are unique for them. They have always succeeded in stopping Congress from cleaning out this system. It is time we clean out this system. And I really do believe that people are beginning to realize that the general interest here must prevail over the special interests if we're going to clean this system up and have a healthier economy, more take-home pay, faster economic growth, which gets us better standard of living, higher wages. You can't get that without tax reform in this day and age.
Let me ask you about a comment you made recently about the president. You said you believe it's important that he's successful because when the president is successful, the country is as well. The president over time has taken very public shots at you, at Leader McConnell, at a number of Republicans in Congress. Is he burning political
No, I'm a big boy. I think it's just his style. I think he just goes with the style that he believes works for him. We get along fine, actually. You know, we spar a little bit, no problem. That's fine. We've sparred in the past. We probably will in the future. But on the agenda for the country, we agree on that. So we have a common agenda that we're busy working on. In the House, we've actually passed a lot of this. We've passed 316 bills in the House already. That's more in the first 6 months of the Trump presidency than in the first 6 months of Obama, Clinton, and both Bushes. So we actually have a website we launched, didyouknow.gop, which shows you all the bills we passed in the House that a lot of people don't even know about, that haven't been getting any kind of coverage. So we're deep on executing this agenda that we have shared agenda with President Trump, which we believe will improve people's lives and really help fix this country's big problems. And so because we have that shared agenda, we're doing fine. We get along well. Look, if I disagree with them, I'll say so, and I do on occasion.
So
it's that simple.
You talk about the bills that not a lot of people know about, the ones that people do know about, the ones that have been at the top of the agenda priority list for Republicans for some time, haven't happened, haven't been passed yet through both houses of Congress or made their way to the president's
desk. We're waiting for tax reform for this fall. The health care bill we passed back in May in the House. The Senate, we're hoping they can get back at this and get this going, but we've already improved the military tremendously. We're on our second round of that. We've overhauled the Veterans Administration. We've passed career and technical education, opioid abuse legislation, you know, basic research for cancer, on and on and on I can go. We passed Kate's Law. We passed Sanctuary Cities reform. We passed funding for the border. All of these things we've already done in the House. The Senate, granted, they have to approve judges and personnel, so that takes them more time to process these bills. But we've done a lot of this already in the House. And what do we have to do this year? We got to get working on tax reform and a few other things, which we've always been planning on doing later in 2017.
Let me ask you about something specific to your first district here in Wisconsin. That is, many of your constituents, the residents in the area, dealt with severe flooding of their own recently. As they look at the devastation, the widespread, unprecedented devastation in Texas, and they see the outpouring of fundraising assistance, the talk about help from the federal government, they're not getting that in the first district. They're not seeing that same kind of response, but the impact on them individually is really no different than folks who've had flooding there,
it didn't raise the level. It's a formula. And the flooding that we had in Racine and Kenosha in Walworth County did not hit the FEMA formula, which means states' resources were sufficient to cover those costs. So it didn't hit the FEMA funding formula, but it did hit the SBA loan formula. So people are getting SBA loans for that flood. We had 12 inches of rain. Houston got 50. It's a whole different magnitude. The kind of disaster, if I had my phone, I'd show you a picture of one of our members in Texas sent me of the interstate near his house, one of the interstates. It looks like Lake Winnebago. There's white caps on the interstate down there in Texas. We didn't have that kind of disaster. We didn't have 50 inches of rain. We had 12 inches of rain. 12 inches of rain was bad, but it was we dealt with it. The disaster passed. People are getting the SBA loans they need and want, and the state is putting in the resources, and the FEMA threshold just wasn't met. It's an objective criteria. And yeah, we're generous people as Wisconsinites. By the way, there were people there in Racine, Kenosha, and Walworth stepping in. I was talking to firefighters in Clinton and Janesville who drove over to Burlington to help with that. So you did see an outpouring of support of people from around Wisconsin helping their friends in the Fox Valley there, down on the Fox River. So that did happen, and just like it's happening now, with people helping J.J. Watt help the people in Houston. All
right, let me ask you real quickly. Milwaukee County's Sheriff David Clarke, controversial, outspoken, submitted his resignation, and there are reports he might be headed for a job in the Trump administration. What are your thoughts on the sheriff and his resignation and the possibility that he may end up working in Washington?
Yeah, I mean, I've known David for years. He's a friend. I thank him for his service. I'm glad he served us so long for so well. I wish him the best of luck. I have no idea what he's going to do, and I wish him the best of luck. I was actually I heard about this last night. I was pretty surprised, just like you were, I supposed. But I knew that he had been talking with the administration, so I look forward to seeing what he's going to do.
House Speaker Paul Ryan, thank you very much for taking some time. Appreciate you being here today.